Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We're going to be talking about the Billy Meier case, especially in regards to reincarnation and the universal consciousness. Edward Albert Meier is a farmer in Switzerland. He lives about an hour east of Zurich in a tiny mountain village called Hinterschmid-Ruti. He's in his late 70s now, and he's known by most of the world as Billy Meier. Billy is a nickname he got from his fondness of Western movies. His real name is Edward, which means guardian of the treasure. And the treasure that Billy guards is an ancient universal teaching called the teaching of the Spirit. And let me recommend one of his excellent books. It's called The Psyche, which gets into many aspects of the teaching of the Spirit. Going back through The Psyche for a second time now. I finally got through the book. But this universal teaching has been taught on the earth before, according to the Maya material. And Billy's spirit has incarnated on the earth before as Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. The person we know as Enoch, the Maya material refers to as Hanok. And the most significant incarnation of Hanok was about 9,300 BC. And that Hanok gave the Hanok prophecies, which are talked about in Contact 215. Evidently, there were 3 other Hanoks that were incarnated on the earth as well. But Billy's spirit goes back to what the Pleiaren refer to as times. Is a German prefix which means most ancient, original. They talk about his spirit incarnating on the planet Laysan, which is also in the constellation of Lyra, this occurred millions and millions of years ago. So what we have here on the earth is a very ancient spirit who has the mission of a prophet and a teacher. Billy's first teacher here on the earth was an extraterrestrial man named Svoth. Svoth is from a group of extraterrestrials that allowed themselves to be called the Pleiadians, and most people in the UFO extraterrestrial community refer to these extraterrestrial humans as Pleiadians. But in 1995 they revealed their true identity. They are not from our Pleiades, they are from another star system, the Pleiades star system, which is in a different space-time configuration from ours. Now, our Milky Way galaxy is about 100,000 light years across. And to make things even more complicated, there are different space-time configurations, which I guess roughly we could refer to as dimensions. And the Maya material says they're shifted from our space-time configuration a fraction of a second. So imagine how incredibly difficult it must be to navigate in our universe, where we have galaxies which are 100,000 light years across that have multiple space-time configurations. You know, we here on Earth, we drive our vehicles, and we basically have to worry about going north, south, east, or west. But imagine if your location is, or your destination is completely vertical of you, or completely underneath you, or in a different time-space configuration. You may have noticed I posted a clip from the Maya material that talks about, it was entitled Attacking Questions from Japan. And what it was really is a story of the origin of the Oriental races, the Japanese and the Chinese, which the Maya material say originated on the other side of our galaxy. Our galaxy has a central sun, and on the other side of our galaxy is a planet they refer to as Kudra. And these Oriental peoples they left their planet Kudra and went on a long, long journey. At some point, they got to the Earth. It's a long, convoluted story. I'll definitely have to go back to that in detail. But they got lost at one point. One group did come to the Earth. It's a long story because I won't get into all the details now, but one group did actually settle here on the Earth, and the other group decided to go back to their home. Well, they never made it back to their home. And actually, what's interesting about this story is it talks about the difficulties and complexities of navigating in space. Particularly, they had millions of ships, I believe, and billions of people. And some of these ships had diseases that broke out on them. And there were many, many people killed. I think millions of people died in space of diseases that just spread rapidly. I mean, the ships, it's relatively close quarters on these ships. So anyway, that's one of the many topics that I've been posting, and many that I made clips of recently. That's particularly interesting. I find the historic material in the Meyer case fascinating. But let's get back to what we're trying to talk about tonight, which is reincarnation and the universal consciousness. And I always like to go back to Billy's experiences. In many ways, we have to experience, I think it's a good thing to kind of experience this as he did. You know, as a child, he got a telepathic contact, and he went out into the forest to play. And this was when he was 5 years old in 1945, February 3rd, in Bulak, Switzerland. He's out in the forest playing, looking down in the stream at some fish that are swimming around in the stream, and out of the corner of his eye he sees this silvery flash, and out of the sky comes Svoth's ship, which is kind of pear-shaped. And I don't know that it actually sat down. I think it ended up hovering just a few inches above the ground, and Svoth steps out of the craft. Svoth is a Plejaren man, and he took Billy by the hand, led him back into the ship, and started to tell him about his purpose in life during this lifetime. See, one interesting thing is, at this point in our evolution, we are a stage 2 society. There are 7 evolutionary steps to human society. And at this stage of our evolution, we typically don't recall our previous lives. Now, at the 5th stage, which they call life and creational wisdom, we do. I think we may have full recollection of our previous lives. What happens at this stage of our evolution is that the material consciousness gets impulses from the storage banks, the universal storage banks, but also in our subconscious, we get inspiration from previous lives. Even though we typically don't have conscious memories. Some people do. They have conscious memories of previous lives, even at our current stage of evolution on the Earth. But typically we don't, and that's best because it would cause a lot of confusion. Billy was specifically told by Svoth about his previous lives so he could understand the importance of his mission and what he was doing here on the Earth. Svoth told Billy that he would have a difficult life, that many would hate him because of his words and what he would teach, and there would be attempts on his life I think there's been some 20 attempts on his life. As you're probably well aware, most of the UFO community attacks him and slanders him, calls him a hoaxer. Even his own wife, I think, left. So Sloth told Billy to stay in the background, to focus on his writings, because after Billy dies, centuries into this third millennium, the people of the earth will start to realize the reality of these contacts and the importance of this information. Eventually, his teaching will bring the people of the earth into a time of peace and prosperity and love. But we're going through this incredibly difficult transitional period, which is called the third millennium. It's going to last about 8 centuries. And we're going to go through some difficult changes, both in terms of the physical world, because we no longer are spiritually aware of our connection to nature. So in our material consciousness, in our materialism, in our material intellectual thinking, we're destroying many aspects of the flora and the fauna on this planet. We are particularly destroying the forests. The forests are the mediators of the climate. They keep the storms from getting too harsh. They provide shade, which keeps the soil from getting too hot. They produce oxygen. They absorb massive quantities of water. They slow the intense winds down. They provide a little extra warmth in the winter. So they're moderating our climate. Now what happens is, because we've lost our connection we've lost the connection with nature. So we destroy nature because we do not realize what it is. So we mow down a forest in complete ignorance without realizing the destruction that we're causing. And this pattern is repeated again and again and again all over the earth. And that's caused the great intensity of our storms. And now we're seeing earthquakes. And we're reaping what we've sowed. Also in the third millennium, we're going to see our leaders become megalomaniacal, which you can see now occurring. They are taking away our rights of self-determination. Our freedoms are being undermined. Our constitutional rights are being taken away. But the people don't realize what's happening because they're so distracted. They will be indolent and obtuse in the third millennium, and I think they will be ambivalent as well. So people do not realize the importance of what's going on around them. So we're going to see this continue to occur in the third millennium. Spoth warned Billy about this. For example, Spoth told Billy that in that same year, 1945, that the United States would drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were a kind of a stake in the ground, marking the beginning of this historical trend, the third millennium. The third millennium is also talked about in more specific terms in the Enoch prophecies in Contact 215, where it states that the greatest disaster in recorded history will occur in North America, where there will be the release of nuclear weapons, biological weapons, and chemical weapons by automated systems which will run outside of human control. lots of things in the third millennium that aren't pleasant. So I think it's very important that we focus on the psyche, which is why I mentioned this book in the beginning, because once we understand the human psyche, we can control our thinking during these most difficult and challenging times. Now, I wanted to correct something or clarify something. In the glossary, in page 216 here in the Psyche, it states that if now it is learned that the human being is animated by a tiny part piece of the creational spirit, then that means in no case that this is a part piece of the creational universal consciousness itself, however, of an energy and a power part piece merely created from it, which is in self-independence forms the creational human spirit form, and also likewise independently evolves through evolution of the human material consciousness. So if you read a lot of the contact notes and a lot of the Meyer material, I think many people, including myself, have erroneously thought that the human spirit is actually part of the creation. That's not the case. It's created from it. Our human spirit is not literally part of the creation, but it's a creation. It's created by this universal consciousness. So what is the universal consciousness? It's a neutral positive spirit. It created our universe. It created billions of universes. It's a neutral positive entity. It builds universes as a part of its own evolution. Semyase, one of Billy's later contacts, when Billy was much older, after Svath had passed away in 1975, Billy's contacts resumed again with a woman from the Pleiadian star system, who at the beginning of his contacts would literally land her beam ship on some of those hillsides or in those valleys and walk out of her ship and speak face to face with Billy out in the open, particularly under trees there in Hinterschmidruti. Later that became too dangerous, particularly when the military was flying Mirage fighter jets around and people were starting to gather around, so Billy would have to go on his moped some distance from his home, and then later I guess he was beamed up into the ship. But Semyase would speak in these very poetic terms about the creational universal consciousness. She would say that wisdom and love go together, and that the creation and its laws are wisdom and love at the same time. Billy would later write in one of his books that the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation, and that creation radiates love, so that every moment and every place we can experience the radiating love of creation. Now that doesn't mean that creation personally loves us. We're independent of creation. We are, in that sense, we are totally responsible for our own evolution. But creation radiates love. The analogy I would make is that the sun radiates light and creation radiates love. And that love is the highest principle in creation. And from that principle, everything follows in absolute logic. When Billy was a young boy, Thoth would explain that everything in the universe is one, and it's all bound together, and that everything that exists because of the immeasurable might and love of the creational universal consciousness. And even before Billy had any contacts with extraterrestrials, as a young boy, he was aware of the radiating love of creation because his spirit could sense that radiating love. In the German, there's a term called empfinden, which is this fine, sensitive feeling, a kind of perception that the human spirit has that can allow it to sense that radiating love of creation. Nothing that exists would exist without the radiating love of creation. Now, the human being can turn his senses off from the radiating love of creation, and that's, I think, the common state of human beings in the third millennium, is they no longer have that fine, sensitive feeling of the radiating love of creation. So that's part of, I think, what the Maya material is trying to reinstill in the people of Earth. Billy's writing called The Goblet of Truth has a paragraph in it which is entitled, What the Truth Knows to Say. And it goes on to say that rivers, lakes, streams, the earth, plants, animals, bushes, trees, everything that crawls and flies on the earth is a life form with a spirit form, and that these spirit forms are on a journey through time which involves many, many lifetimes, and that death is just the passage into another realm, the world of pure spirit. Now, the spirit realm exists in the same space as our earth here, but in a different dimension. So when you die, your human spirit will come out of your body. Your human spirit's about the size of a flea, and it goes into this spirit realm. Now, the universal consciousness will take your previous life experiences and put them into the storage banks. It arranges them kind of like a mosaic. At the appropriate time, your spirit will be placed back into the body of a child 21 days after the sperm fertilizes the egg. And then you'll start your next lifetime. Now, the wisdom of your predecessor personalities is stored in your subconscious, where you will receive inspiration as your material consciousness again evolved in this lifetime. Well, I wanted to take just a half an hour or so this afternoon and take a little time to talk about the Maya material again. And I want to thank everyone ahead of time that's listened to this information, and I'll be on Revolution Radio at the normal time tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for listening.